My name is Tiara Clark, and I will be discussing racial discrimination within the housing market. I chose the housing market because I personally experienced racial discrimination, and I will discuss that once I finish giving my information. Massey and Denton, 1993, Yender, 1995, said racial discrimination was institutionalized in the American real estate industry during the 1920s and was well established in private practice by the 1940s. Until 1968, when the Fair Housing Act was passed, the discriminatory behavior was open and widespread among agencies. Even though the Fair Housing Act was passed, blacks still received discrimination in hidden ways. It was not blatant discrimination and racism. Before the act, renters and housing authorities would display whites only or blacks don't apply. After the act, they would discriminate by the ways blacks spoke, determining how they speak, the words they use, and telling them there were not properties available and only rented to blacks in certain areas, and making prices higher for blacks so that blacks not be able to afford housing outside of the ghettos or within white neighborhoods. And this limited blacks to only certain neighborhoods and away from whites and better schooling systems. Racial discrimination is not as widespread as it was years ago, but it is still present throughout the housing market today. Some blacks or other races don't even know they are victims of racial discrimination in the housing market. In 1987, Glaster wrote to more than 200 local fair housing organizations and obtained written reports of 50 different audit studies carried out in the residential rental markets throughout the United States during the 1980s. Despite differences in measures and methods, he concluded that racial discrimination continues to be a dominant feature of metropolitan housing markets in the 1980s. Using a fairly conservative measure of racial bias, he estimated that blacks experienced a 50% chance of discrimination on average in rental markets of American urban areas. Investigators found that housing was made systematically more available to whites in 45% of all rental transactions, and that whites were offered more favorable rental terms in 17% of those cases when rental housing was made available, and that was from Yender, 1995. By housing being more available to the whites, this left blacks limited to places to live and living in cramped apartments and ghettos, where housing, the neighborhoods, schools, and even jobs were limited and not good on pay. Though there are plenty of integrated neighborhoods throughout our country, racial discrimination does still happen within the housing market. I don't think there's anything systematically that can be done to prevent this, because we still have to call, and that gives them the opportunity to determine our race from the way we speak. Or they can judge it from our name. Like if someone has, per se, a ghetto sounding name, they can be turned away because of racial discrimination. And these are things that we have to do. We have to call in, or we have to give them our ID for verification. And all of that just gives them the opportunity to discriminate against us. And I experienced this myself. When I was going to purchase my house, a friend of mine that I worked with, she's a white lady, we were both looking to buy at the same time. And she said she decided not to buy because the mortgage would be too high and the expenses for owning a house, she said she couldn't afford it. But we worked at the same job. We had the same pay at Dollar General. We were both managers. My credit was even better than hers. And she had like repos. She had like 2 repos on her credit and a few other things, but my credit was better than hers. I had a good good payment history and all of that. She referred me to this loan officer in a town over, and she said that they offered all of this stuff like grants. They offered her a grant, and she said she got pre-qualified for $90,000. So I said, okay, that sounds good. I went and applied with my same pay that I had as her, better credit, and I had even been on the job longer than she had. But the lady, she told me that I only got approved for $40,000. And I instantly knew what it was. Like, that prevents us from getting like $40,000. I couldn't even find a house that's fixed up good enough for $40,000, and she said it was because something about my pay stubs weren't consistent. Like the rate on my pay stubs weren't consistent, the hours weren't consistent. So I'm like, how could they not be consistent when I had a co-worker apply also, and her hours were the same. We literally have the same amount of hours every week. We got 38 hours. But she said I only got approved for $40,000. When my white co-worker got approved for $90,000, and I had better credit than her. I believe she racially discriminated against me and just told me that I could only get approved for $40,000 because of my race, because I was black, probably from how I sounded, maybe even from my name. I don't know, but that's what I believed happened. I didn't take it to court or do anything legal with it because I felt like, why would I hurt her family or maybe her kids, with her losing her job or anything like that. That's the way that I thought about it, because I feel like I have a heart, and when she only approved me for $40,000, but I went to somewhere else and got approved for $124,000. So that's how I automatically knew she was discriminating against me. And from also what she approved my fellow co-worker for, when I had better credit than her and things like that. But I don't think there's anything that can be done, because I believe there's always going to be a way for people to discriminate, to racially discriminate, and sometimes we don't even know it. Sometimes these people hide and we don't even know that they're racially discriminating against us. And even with blacks, I know sometimes we racially discriminate. Whites, they racially discriminate. I think it all starts with your heart. I think it has to start with parents. We have to stop teaching our kids these racial things. And I think sooner or later, it will all stop. It will be no more. Thank you.